Susan Gardner here for Municipal World. We're at the 2019 Transforming Local Government Conference in Reno, Nevada. Joining me in our media center this morning is Tanya Ange, Deputy City Manager for the City of Boulder. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me today.
So glad you could come in to chat.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your involvement. I mean, beyond the work you do for the city, you're also part of the board here at the Alliance for Innovation that hosts this conference.
Yeah, so innovation is important to the city of Boulder. It's actually one of our core values, and it's linked to the vision of the city, service excellence for an inspired future. And so if we do look ahead at what that future holds, innovation is really a cornerstone for us to be focusing on as an organization. And so we look at ways to really live into and step into our innovation value, and Alliance for Innovation is a partner in that work, exploring what other cities are doing, approaches other cities are doing, and then how can we share in the work that we're doing in this ecosystem of municipal government, because at the end of the day, each of us are stewards of democracy and are responsible for carrying forward and leaving a legacy of public service at the end of the day.
That is a very enlightened and refreshing perspective on the work that local government does. So how is that reflected in the work happening in Boulder in service delivery, and what kinds of initiatives do you see that played out in?
Okay, so we've structurally incorporated innovation into our organization. About a year and a half ago, we restructured our IT department and changed the focus to innovation and technology. And we know that innovation does not always have to include technology, but our innovation arm helps build skills amongst our staff teams of what does innovation look like. It can be the small incremental steps you're taking. So as simple as a department, how you're managing your files or your emails, to the big shiny new things that our community can see as enhanced service delivery. And so looking at that spectrum, and at the same time, how do we really step into planned abandonment as well, and really look at the services that we're delivering and which ones do we need to stop because they're not meeting what our community needs are. And so we've incorporated this through our internal leadership academy, which a third of the focus is on innovation and building the innovation skill set amongst our employees. So our innovation and technology director leads the staff through a 9-month training, which includes give me your 100 ideas that you have. And when any of us think of 100 ideas, that's overwhelming. But then you start to narrow that down into what are some ideas that I can start to test and then refine so that we can implement them into action. And we've had great feedback from staff on that approach. We also are always looking at how do we look at what the future holds and what are some emerging technologies and how can we test them and pilot them so that we're really enhancing service delivery for our community.
And I'm sure that means that the organization is a little bit better prepared to moving into new technologies instead of kind of, waiting. Like, often government has a reputation for being, the last mile of tech implementation.
I think we're really trying to step into that space. Change can be hard for any of us, and especially if your work plate is 100% full. It is overwhelming to think of, I need to learn a new technology, I need to learn a new process. And so thinking about what that value add is and how that benefits that individual employee, a division, a department, the organization, and the community as a whole is something that we really focus on. What's that message, and how do we really look at that scaling value proposition?
How does all of this impact the culture for employees and administrators in Boulder?
So in Boulder, we have a community that believes in local government. Per capita, we have the highest master's degree attainment rate in the entire United States, which really speaks to the education level, but then also the involvement of our community and really asking the city for more services and being on the forefront of leading edge practices. So with that partnership with our community and our community being so engaged, we need to be thoughtful about how we roll initiatives out. And so we really look at how do we pilot or incremental changes, because failure is sometimes not an option.
Yes.
And so internally right now, amongst our leadership team and leaders at all levels of our organization, we're really starting to talk about failure and what failure means in the public sector and how we can step into failure and feeling safe.
Yes.
Failing fast.
Yes.
And then failing forward.
Yes.
And building that skill set among staff, because our community has high demands. And so where are the right spaces to fail, and where are the right spaces to fail forward and recover, and then move forward with the incremental changes still.
Okay. So a lot of communities where there's high demand for increased public services, the community has they want the services, but they don't necessarily understand the cost attached to having them. How would you describe that in Boulder? Is that a factor there?
So I think we always, as staff, try to be mindful of the value proposition of the services that we deliver, and look at efficiency and effectiveness behind the services, and communicate that in the way that our council and our community can then make the determination: do we want to add additional funding into this service because we see that the effectiveness and efficiency is there? So should we scale up the service? And one of the areas that we're having that community conversation about right now is our library. Our library, our main branch library, has over 1 million visitors a year. And our circulation of not only online materials but also hard books is increasing. And that's not the norm of libraries across the United States. And so right now we're having a community dialogue of how much does the community want to pay for the library, and then how should that be structured as we move forward. So it's tied back to the vision of our organization and that service excellence for an inspired future.
So how do you, what sort of tools do you use to have that conversation with the community? Because that's often a challenge for communities. How do you get that community engagement aspect where you involve people in that decision making, and or at least consider public input and seriously consider it? So what sort of mechanisms do you use in Boulder to do that?
So we have a community engagement framework which adopts the IAP2 principles of engagement. And so we use various tools such as Bank the Table software. What we would like to step into is how do we have two-way communication with our community through text messaging. And we had learned this through an engagement exercise we had done with our community last year, actually around transportation. And we had some community members who said, we don't want to give you our name, we don't want to give you our email address, but we'll give you a cell phone number to communicate.
Are there other cities that are doing that right now? Do you know? Is that it's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So maybe we'll be on the leading edge. And, be happy to share the learning that we have through this process with others.
All right. Well, there'll probably be a presentation.
Yes, maybe.
Another TLG.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess you're forecasting the future there.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and chat with us, and share the good stuff that's happening in Boulder, and talk about the Alliance as well. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. I'm Susan Gardner for Municipal World. we share your stories.